One of the failed criticisms that Donald Trump and Republicans have latched onto about Kamala Harris is calling her a DEI candidate. This is an argument that the only reason or the primary reason that she's the Democratic nominee right now is either because of preferential treatment she received because she's a woman, or because she's not white, or because she's both a woman of color, we would say, not white and a woman, or another version of it is because she slept her way to the top at the beginning of her career. Now, all of this has a particular goal, and it's to suggest that Kamala Harris isn't qualified to be president. It implies she didn't rise through the ranks of politics based on merit and achievement. So today, we're going to discuss why this criticism doesn't make any sense and how, like so many claims from the right, it's actually more true about Donald Trump than it is about Kamala Harris. It's yet another example of the projection that they love to do. So let's start with Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris has had a long career in public service, steadily climbing the ranks over the years. Started as deputy district attorney in the 90s, worked in the DA's office in San Francisco, ultimately becoming DA in 2004, served as California's Attorney General from 2011 to 2017, before becoming U.S. Senator in 2017. She was chosen in 2020 to be Joe Biden's running mate and has now served as VP for almost an entire presidential term. That is quite a resume. She's clearly qualified to be president of the United States. So what are Trump and Republicans basing their argument on? Well, some Republicans argue that Kamala Harris slept her way to the top because she had a relationship with California politician Willie Brown in the 1990s, the argument being she was leveraging being a young, attractive woman to further her career. Now, it is true that Brown appointed Harris to two political positions during their relationship. One was on the California Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board and one on the California Medical Assistance Commission. Now, these appointments have been cited to argue that her career was solely based on the relationship with Brown. These are really pretty minor positions compared to what she ultimately achieved, and it doesn't really make much sense. The relationship with Brown ended either in late 95 or early 96. She kept climbing the ladder without his help, saying his career is over. I will be alive and kicking for the next 40 years. I do not owe him a thing. And indeed, Kamala Harris continued rising through the ranks because of her qualifications. But that's not the more common accusation. The more common accusation the right has been trotting out is that she was chosen to be Joe Biden's VP only because she was a woman and or a minority racially or both. Now, it is a fact that during the 2020 Democratic primary, Joe Biden stated, I want to choose a woman as my running mate, so the country could potentially have its first female vice president.
If I'm elected president, my cabinet, my administration will look like the country. And I commit that I will, in fact, I'll pick a woman to be vice president. There are a number of women who are qualified to be president tomorrow. I would pick a woman to be my vice president.
In the wake of George Floyd's murder, there was a push for Biden to pick a woman of color. 4 of his finalists were Black women, and ultimately he selected Kamala Harris. The narrative that Kamala Harris was selected solely because Biden wanted a Black woman for vice president ignores the reality that many qualified candidates were considered, and Harris stood out because of experience, her policy positions, and the energy that she would bring to the ticket. Harris had a track record. She was a candidate herself in 2020. People knew her. She offered some intangibles that made her appealing to the Biden campaign. But that doesn't make you a DEI candidate, diversity, equity, and inclusion, any more than any other strategic VP pick would. Vice presidents are often chosen to try to appeal to certain regions or demographics. Whether it works is a different question, but it's common. J.D. Vance and Tim Walz, for example, were clearly chosen in part because of their appeal to working class voters in the Great Lakes region who are overwhelmingly white. Yet no one would label them DEI candidates. Identity has always been a major factor in presidential candidates choosing their running mate because they want a balance on the ticket. In 2008, John McCain, as an elderly man, chose Sarah Palin, a young woman, to be his running mate. Maybe it's a little much to say McCain was elderly then, but as a middle-age plus guy, he chose Sarah Palin as a younger woman, to be his running mate with the idea that it would invigorate the campaign. Barack Obama chose Joe Biden, believing that Biden's gray hairs and experience would balance out the ticket and alleviate the concerns about Obama being too young and not having enough experience. These considerations aren't racist or sexist or playing into DEI. It's just smart politics. Now, there's a further irony, which is that in 2016, Trump explicitly said he would not pick a woman because it could be seen as pandering. Remember this?
His campaign manager says the campaign probably won't choose a woman or a member of a minority group. That would be viewed as pandering, I think.
Sure enough, Trump went with a man, Mike Pence. Since Pence was chosen for being a man and women weren't considered by Trump, does that mean Pence wasn't deserving or qualified to be vice president? Does that make Pence a DEI candidate or an affirmative action choice of sorts? When Donald Trump faced his third Supreme Court nomination in 2020, he declared he will choose a woman, possibly because he had already chosen two men. And he did pick Amy Coney Barrett. Would Republicans argue she was a DEI pick because Trump said, I'm only considering women?
You know, we're working very hard on getting a third Supreme Court justice. The only thing I'll say for the women, it will be a woman.
It's also critical to discuss something about Michelle Obama that she mentioned in her DNC speech. Most people aren't afforded the grace of falling forward or benefiting from the affirmative action of generational wealth. Donald Trump has benefited significantly from the privileges of his wealthy background, something he was born into by chance. He didn't do anything to achieve that. Trump's upbringing in a wealthy family gave him opportunities that most Americans don't have. Access to elite education, hundreds of millions of dollars for business ventures. These advantages are a form of affirmative action for the wealthy, where success is often determined by birth, not by merit. Now, according to The Economist, social mobility is decreasing, and the odds of an American child being born into the bottom fifth of incomes and making it to the top fifth of incomes when they're an adult is just 7.5%. So as much as people like to tell themselves that everyone has a fair shake in America, the most important factor in how rich you become is how rich the family you're born into is. These advantages far outweigh the advantages of an affirmative action type program that really only helps along the margins. Now, there's more to it, which is that the Republican Party as a whole benefits from a type of affirmative action. As the political structure in the United States, including the Electoral College and the Senate, disproportionately benefits Republicans. It provides an inequitable advantage that undermines a true meritocracy. The Electoral College lets a candidate win the presidency without even winning the popular vote. We saw it in 2000. We saw it in 2016, both of which benefited Republican candidates. The structure of the U.S. Senate gives disproportionate power to the less populous states, many of which lean Republican. That leads to an imbalance in representation that doesn't reflect the popular will. These systemic advantages for Republicans undermine their criticisms of DEI when their own political success is bolstered by structural inequities. And finally, there is the point about how this DEI criticism just isn't resonating. These kinds of accusations are angering voters. They're angering especially women and minority voters. They see them as attempts to delegitimize their achievements. And as we've discussed in recent weeks, Trump's race-based attacks aren't helping him. The American people are rejecting them. He keeps using them, maybe because he thinks it will be effective. The argument that Kamala Harris is a DEI candidate ignores this broader context of American politics, where privilege, especially wealth and race, historically have played a major role in determining who succeeds politically. The narrative also overlooks the fact that many successful politicians, including Trump, have leveraged and continue to leverage their privileged backgrounds to achieve power, often without the very same scrutiny of their qualifications. Republicans making this argument are either acting in bad faith and or confused, and they're hoping that latent racism in their messaging will appeal to voters. It doesn't seem to be working so far. Let's hope it fails.